guess. Alright. We're on? Yeah. Alright. Well, my name is Jason. I'm delighted to introduce Terence and Big Mike. We are, what the hell is this event called? This is the
Unplugged Expo 2.
This is Unplugged Expo 2.
There's so many unanswered questions in the first one, they had to do a sequel.
There's so many unanswered questions, they had to do the sequel. This is the sequel. We are small. It's raining out. We are small, but we have a strong little contingent. Someone just came into the room. He's adding like 20% to our total audience. Welcome. I'm delighted to introduce Terence and Big Mike, the creators and stars of Chargeback Forward. It's a great internet YouTube video game show. It's a show about games, it's a show about gaming, it's a show about gaming culture, but it's also a show about enthusiasm, really intense enthusiasm for game systems that have long been forgotten, for lost histories, for vintage insights. It's a show that will remind you that Mario, once upon a time, wasn't actually a plumber, he was a carpenter. I'm not sure I ever knew that, but apparently he was originally a carpenter. And it's also a show, as much as it's a show informed by enthusiasm for gaming culture, it's also a show informed by criticism. Increasingly, it's a show that's taking on the industry and some of its baser impulses, and so maybe we'll get into some of that in a little bit. This is a slapdash operation. We'll splice in some clips, but really, I think I want to start by for our fans in the Netherlands, we're going to show a clip of Big Mike's video game room. It's like one room of your condo, right?
Yes, yeah. It was supposed to be a master bedroom, but nah.
So it's basically your game museum.
I thought, bed, Street Fighter machine.
Okay,
yeah.
So why don't we talk a little bit about how you guys met and started the show, and we'll sort of go from there.
Well, basically, first how we met was I was been collecting for years, like ever since I was a kid, and I was always one of those crazy anal kids who just wanted box instructions, everything to be complete. So I discovered I basically drained the stores dry in the GTA, and I decided to go on Craigslist and Kijiji and just say, hey, private collector, looking for stuff, we'll pay you more than the store, but if you want to sell it on eBay, sell it on eBay. So quite literally, I got a lot of good responses out of that, and Terence was actually the last, I kid you not, the last person. Because I looked at his response, and I thought this would be the last person I go to. I've already spent enough money, and he sent me a list of everything he wanted to sell off, and I honestly cherry-picked, and I think I offered him a good price on everything. Then Terence responded and says, listen, I just want to get rid of the whole bloody thing. Why don't you just come down and take a look at it? And that's when I showed up.
So I buzzed Mike up. I was living in a building at the time, and I'm waiting. I'm kind of peering out the door. Just I didn't know what to expect. Because I don't know. I only briefly talked to you. I'm not even sure if I had talked to you on the phone.
No, it was all.
So yeah, so there's no expectation. So out of lumbers this huge guy with his shirt like a third of it unbuttoned, and he's weird tattoos that I couldn't see from the distance. So this is going to be interesting. And within 5 words, I knew we were going to be friends. It was the weirdest thing. It was just kind of we kind of were on the same level enough where it's hey man, come up with us the chicken wings.
Yeah, it was chicken wings.
It was chicken wings.
And so you were unloading your game. I remember when you had a lot of you had all these systems, and you had all these vintage systems, and you had a lot of hardware and software, and you were unloading all of that. I think that's interesting because you guys do there's a real blend. You guys come at this show from different angles. You are obviously a hardcore collector.
Yeah.
You're into gaming, but you're also much more thinking about kind of the industry. So how do you guys sort of do you see that distinction between yourselves? Is that a fair distinction? And how do you sort of reconcile the fact that?
Yeah, it's a little of both from both ends. I actually have a job in the industry, so I got a little bit of insight with the financial part of it, what happens, and kind of what bugs me is when sites I'll rag on Kotaku for a second when they write articles, especially with the fall of THQ, where I read that article and they have no idea what they're talking about. I was actually involved with the fall of THQ, and they got everything wrong in every article they wrote.
You're the person responsible for the fault.
I can now talk about it because they're gone and non-disclosure agreements are gone. But they called me several times trying to get their help or my help to bail them out of certain situations and all that. So, and I know exactly what was their downfall, and it was not because one didn't sell as well as it expected or anything like that. I know exactly what it was.
So what was that, Mike?
It was UDraw. The UDraw tablet killed THQ. There was a meeting, I was talking about THQ rep. They had a meeting because they made the UDraw for the Wii. It was doing quite well, and some moron in the boardroom stood up and said, hey, why don't we put it on the PS3 and the Xbox 360 and develop all the R&D into that? So instead of someone saying, hey, you're fired to that guy right away because you're talking to a crowd of people who are playing, Halo, Gears of War, Uncharted, 90% of your people have no interest in drawing on a tablet. They invested $100 million worth of R&D into that and lost it all. So now THQ is they're not EA or Sony, they can't take that much of a hit. That one hit alone wiped them clean. And, so it wasn't Homefront or Darksiders 2 not selling as well. It was basically the entire UDraw. That one moment in the boardroom killed the company.
So you have some industry perspective.
Yeah.
But do you look at your colleague and think like, do you miss collecting this stuff?
Not at all. The whole reason why I even responded to the ad is because I don't know, I get very uncomfortable when any place I live. I only live at any given place 1 year at a time. So the moving process is so normal for me that I realized that I had like a couple of those like Tupperware big cases that remained unopened from move to move. And so for me, money wasn't really an issue like hell. For what he cherry-picked, I was outstanding what he offered me. And I wasn't looking to gouge him, but it was kind of like, well, you know what, you're giving me so much for this, why don't you give a little more and you take everything? Like that was the condition, take everything. So, there's a small part of me that kind of like misses it, but whenever I go to this guy's place, there's just a giant room full of games and statues and art, and it's like I say it over and over again that it's a museum, like it's a museum in someone's home, and like we were even talking about it at a certain point, and the whole concept of our show gestated probably about a year before we even did it. Yeah. Just kind of like she's saying, like I wish I could show this off, and this and that, and then it just kind of went, it just kind of like quieted down.
Exactly. There was a piece of me. My ego was very, very, very small, but there was a piece of me who kind of wanted to show it off. I saw guys like Johnny and Pete Dorr do their thing, and I'm like, hey, why not? I should do it too.
So you guys recently did. So the online people will watch a clip at this point. They'll see the game room. It's shocking. And you did a 26-part, 2-hour tour of this room recently.
And that didn't even cover everything.
That didn't even cover everything. So what was it like filming all of that stuff?
Horrific.
It was, we learned very quickly, and we've known it forever, but now it was really shown in our face that it wasn't a controlled set. We're basically trying to film in a room, but now it's a large room, but still there's stuff everywhere, and with camera equipment and lights, and me walking in the way, and it really was a nightmare, and I can't thank everyone enough involved, who helped us do that. It was just, for something that would have killed anyone else, we got through it.
And it was really in stark contrast. When we started the show, the very first thing we did is we did a 6-part 1-hour tour. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know the camera. We didn't know how to light. It was literally us with floor lights, trying to aim it and using. Were we using your car, your windshield
my sun filter? Yeah, car.
To try to kind of bounce the light. We think we know what we're doing, but we don't, right? And it looked terrible. We were terrible on camera.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I take pride in the fact that since we started the show summer of 2010 to the time of this recording, October 2013, we've really come a long way. Just with us on camera, because I watch the old episodes, and sometimes I'm kind of like, well, that was a good part, I really like that outtake, and other times it's like, Jesus Christ. But everyone has to start somewhere, right?
Yep.
You guys have a lot of fun on camera, and I think you're having more fun. In the more recent episodes, I think there's less of a sense of I need to perform. It's just you're being more natural, I think.
A lot of that comes from feedback from the fans as well.
Yeah.
It's very easy to tell on a lot of stuff. Barely any of it is scripted. We come up with a couple things we want to talk about, and then it just Then we start talking, and then it just kind of flows. And then there'll be moments where after I'll sit there and be like, I wish I talked about this or whatever, or wish I didn't mention it that way. But I think it's more like just the fans seem to. That's one thing they always seem to comment on. Is they said it seems natural, which it is.
And what's the biggest thing you guys disagree on?
Last year it was the Wii U. I was right, you were wrong. And
What were you right? What was the disagreement?
I knew the system was going to flop. I knew it was a huge mistake. And Mike is a classic definition of an early adopter. So like he'll buy.
I'll buy anything that comes out.
Yeah.
I think in recent history, the Vita was the only thing I waited a few months for. Everything else I bought since the Sega Genesis was CD, like the day it came out on Mac buy.
So it wasn't even like an argument. Like I'm not going to tell Mike what to do. Like obviously he's buying it. I'm going to have access to play it. I'd be shooting myself in the foot if I ever had like any interest in playing it. But that was it. And I think this year is not even the same thing. Like he's getting the Xbox One at launch. Microsoft's a piece of shit. And they're charging $100 extra for something that benefits them mostly, not us. And of course, I'm talking about their new Kinect and how they're using it to data bank.
If they want to see what kind of Doritos I'm eating, that's fine.
They want to see you jerk off while you're eating Doritos playing a movie, right? But for me, like you know what, like something like that you're going to shove, I don't want it. And so for me personally, that's the only difference. Is because of that extra $100. I'm not going to buy it, and I'll probably buy it at some point, but that's where we differ.
Yeah.
He'll be a first day adopter of it, and I'm kind of like, I'll wait and see. Like I hope it fails miserably.
I think for me with the Xbox One, when it originally had their DRM situation, in terms of my witness, even I, Mr. Buy Everything Day One, was not going to buy it because, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later. For me, it's owning a game. I didn't want to pay a license to rent a game. This is not some digital download horseshit. I wanted to actually own a physical disc and be able to, like, a friend wants to borrow Forza 5, here you go, I want to be able to do that. But the second, like literally the day they said, listen, we screwed up and took it all out, I pre-booked it right away. And I told Terence this on the phone because we were talking about it, and I said to him, in all honesty though, I'm not going to go one day without playing Dead Rising 3. And that's what it comes down to me, like, it's actually like the games. Like, I know politics aside, and believe me, like, I fully admit, like, that DRM thing originally it was breaking my heart. Everyone who read the blogs I put online, like, it was just killing me that they were going to do that. But it really comes down to, like, I see Forza 5 running in 60 frames 1080p, and like, I just got to play that day one.
Okay. We might need to cut to a video of someone explaining, like, all the technical stuff.
Fuck that. They want. No guts.
Okay, keep this shit in there. Okay. So yeah, but the Wii U though, like we have a Wii, and I briefly considered it simply because I always want to play the new Mario game, right? Like, because the new Mario game is always like the iconic game. But I couldn't go. So what specifically was? And I want to get. We're going to come back to the digital download horseshit that you were talking about. And I want to hear about that. But what was this debate about the Wii U, and why were you right? And I think you were right.
I was right.
Unless you don't agree.
The whole issue is the technology came too late. So as opposed to starting the next generation, what do they call it now, Gen 9 or something? Gen 8?
8, yeah.
Gen 8. They were entering the current generation with the PS3 and the 360 6 years after the fact, or give or take. So for me, I thought it was nice, but this is something that could have been done years ago, and how they were trying to sell it was, we have this innovative new like big gamepad with a huge touchscreen and all this business, and it's a Wiimote and all this, and I didn't buy it because one, it looked too big. Two, it seems really unnecessary. Like there are some solid reasons to use that. However, not a lot of them, are really prevalent. And Nintendo has a history of ostracizing third-party development, and no one really knew what to do with it. The system didn't really sell well, and they already shot themselves in the foot. So it's an uphill battle for them at this point.
It is, and I do agree with Terence now. Like, listen, when I originally got the Wii U, like Terence said, day one, no matter what it is. But also, I know now buying Nintendo system, not like in the 16-bit days, you buy a Nintendo system now for the first-party stuff. Like Terence is right, they do have a really nasty habit of treating their third-party developers like crap. And I love Iwata as a human being. I think he's the most pleasurable face Nintendo's ever had. And he's a genius when it comes to because he's a programmer himself. I really think he should step down. He's made some horrendously bad mistakes in the past. I can't even count how many years now. He's operating Nintendo the way they did back in the late 80s and early 90s, which was when they had all these third-party developers locked into these contracts, and they're basically telling the public, you want to play something else, what are you going to do? Go play Sega? No, you're not. You're going to stick with us. But then when those contracts ended and Konami and Capcom started making games for their systems, they started to lose that. And unfortunately, Iwata, you call the Japanese business model all you want, but Sony is, we're going to see hopefully in a few months has figured out that no, you can't do that anymore. They're still treating their third-party developers like it's 1991. And now the difference is now they've got two juggernauts who have got more money to throw at this than anyone else. And they will lose, like Microsoft and Sony, they'll lose money on hardware just to beat the crap out of anyone else. So it is, like I heard Terence say, the Wii U, it's done its sales in its first year what the system should do in its first couple of months. So it really is, like, I don't know if they're past the point of return yet, but if they're not, it's coming. November 15th and the week after, that'll be the real telltale time.
So you're basically buying a Nintendo system now for nostalgia.
Yeah, like
for the Zelda game.
Exactly. Like I was making fun of myself just recently. Actually, I've had the Wii U now for it's almost been a full year. I own 4 games for it, and you're talking to me, the guy who has, I spend every penny I own on games, and that system I only have 4 games for it. So if that's not a sign, I don't know what it is.
You guys are quite vocal. So you're quite vocal with these industry criticisms. Do you get a lot of blowback online? Like, are there fans? Is everyone kind of like?
I went off on a tangent by myself. There was a period in the spring where Mike and I couldn't get together a lot, and I really hit Microsoft hard, especially when they made their ridiculous declaration of what their DRM was and what they were trying to do. Like, I'm not going to say it's the worst idea, but now it's not the time, and it may never be the right time for it. But I took it upon myself to open their gaping mouth and shit down their throats. And the overwhelming consensus on it was one of the more vocal comments threads we had, and 9 out of 10 people agreed with me. Like 0.5 out of 10 would be like, they were more neutral and more mature than I was in those videos and welcoming, but the other 0.5 was pure fanboy, and they just like talk gibberish to me, and it was endearing. It's like talking to a little child sometimes with some of these people. But you know what? It was my opinion. I shared it. That's what YouTube is. Like, we're just two guys, and we share our opinions. People can either agree with it or not.
Yeah, what I like about the show is it's not like blind fandom. There's like a blend of like the intense enthusiasm, especially for like obscure stuff, which I think is almost like a badge of your seriousness.
That's one thing we wanted to take when we first started the show, is we agreed like no fanboys, meaning like you're not become the old Sony or the old Microsoft. Like it's like even with like we see my game, I play for every system, every company. I don't like this whole console war. I honestly don't give a crap who wins, who loses, because competition is the best thing ever. Like these people who just want, like, say, an old Sony World or something like that, you're insane. Like you cannot have a monopoly because quality just plummets. Competition is what makes everyone stronger, and that's the way just this industry works. You don't want anyone to get too comfortable. It's kind of like how Activision maybe getting too comfortable with Call of Duty because it keeps on selling. Then you get guys like, okay, let's throw in some Battlefields, let's throw in this. And you need those guys to start constantly throw other games at them to make them, try harder and harder and harder.
So Nintendo's like a socialized video game culture where they want to like control it and everything from top down.
Yeah, and they still do. And it's like I said before, it just not work anymore. It worked great in anywhere from 1985 to 1992, but after that, no. And not anymore. And they screwed over partners. And listen, they created their own worst enemy. They created Sony to in the video game industry because they screwed them over with Philips. You just can't do crap like that. That's not what it comes down to.
And Nintendo's 2 for 2 on using last gen hardware for their next gen systems as well, which is real. They tried it. Iwata's like, well, thank you. And he starts explaining that it's going to be fun and it's going to be cheap. Make no mistake, Nintendo doesn't lose money on consoles at that point, and that's because they use dated hardware. And they go, oh, it's the gameplay experience, it's the gameplay experience. But the Wii U was, to be generous, 3-4 years too late.
Yeah.
It would have had a bigger impact then. So
maybe we can circle back to the game room where you say at one point that like game cartridge, like that a video game it's more than just the data on the cartridge.
Yeah.
And I think this maybe connects to what you were saying about the digital download stuff. And so maybe you can just elaborate.
Sure. So for me, like without no question, video games are art. Same as music and movies are art. And
I gotta interject. Not all video games are art.
No, that's true. And same with not all music and not all movies are. Like the Waterboy is not art.
But they have the potential to be.
Exactly. So what I mean by that, but being more than just data on the cartridge, and that one of the reasons I don't like digital downloads is not only because the whole aspect, like I said before, I want to own what I pay for. I don't want to license or pay a lease on a license or anything like that. Is the fact that even like there's so much more experience than just playing the game. Like for me, it's like the artwork, everything involved in the production. Same with the movie. Like for me, like my favorite movie of all time is Blade Runner, and just like the books on production design and how much, it's all about how much work goes into this one item. It's a shame to get this one item, you just kind of download it and it's over. And I think we're unfortunately becoming a culture of people who are sacrificing quality for convenience. And there's no better way to look at it than the music industry is the fact that, I know MP3s are convenient, and I get it, you can put 1,000 songs on your phone and it's awesome. But when you're at home in front of a home theater, it's still the worst way to listen to music in terms of sound quality. And there's nothing better than when you get like an album like AC/DC's Back in Black and you get like the thing with the folder and the lyric sheet and all that. All that's now missing. And that's the same thing with games. Like if you want to download like some little arcade game like Pac-Man DX, that's fine. But a big game like a Resident Evil or a Gears or Final Fantasy or something like that, there's so much work and millions of dollars that go into this. It's almost a shame that you can't have like a big something to really represent what's going on. It's like going to the movie theater and seeing something in IMAX and waiting and getting into the line. It's all this excitement, everything that kind of gets involved all in one, and it all has to do with the whole. It's art, and art shouldn't be subjugated to just okay, I got it. It just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think people think I'm weird. I'll still buy a CD. Well, CDs are now cheaper than like there's something you can get $7 CD to use. And then you have the CD and you have the physical thing. Like I'm worried about like no one's going to own anything anymore. Like we're all just going to sort of
and it infiltrates this whole DRM that we're also against. You look at things like iTunes and all that, where they're like the kings of like no, it's not your iTunes. You can't share your songs. Screw you. It's where like if Terence wants to borrow an album, here we go. Listen to it, experience it. This is what you should do.
The best way to surmise is this: Uncharted 1 sold X amount of copies. Uncharted 2 sold many more. And the reason for that is because that physical media, when people were done with it, they went and they traded it in a store. And then someone that wasn't so sure to pop down $60 was like, $30, $40, I'll try. So I think publishers are shooting themselves in the foot by trying very hard to eliminate, the second-hand market, because while money doesn't directly go to them, they're so focused on doing series now. There is a very documented trends of sales improving over time, and the second-hand market has a lot to do with that. And if this is a digital-only marketplace and environment, that's not going to happen.
It's the problem that happens when the companies are run by the accountants, when they just see the hard numbers like, oh, okay, so we don't have to make any physical disc to print out your artwork, and then we just people download. Yeah, we can still charge the same price. Awesome. But Terence is right. Like, people forget, like, back when I was a teenager working in video game stores, the amount of people who would trade in games, and then Terence is right. They'd play the original when the sequel comes out, it's like, that was awesome. Then they'd spend $60 on the sequel. But video game companies, since the dawn of time, have always tried, even by like Japanese import games, there's no resale on the back right away. They've always tried to stop it. And they always refuse to believe that's the way it works. And as I said, it's just coming down to the accountants running it. It's not the people who have the real world experience. Like, listen, you can go to school for 4 freaking years and take all the accounting courses you want. But that's great. You can balance a spreadsheet. Congratulations. But it doesn't, give you the real world experience that's so important when it comes to things like this.
I'm always worried about the kids too. Like the kids these days. Like they just assume, like they're just gonna be like, well, video games and music and movies, they're not made by people. They're just things you get online and you sort of download it, and like there's all these like programmers and artists and musicians who are like making nothing. apparently, the big Daft Punk song this summer, Get Lucky was they on Spotify they earned like $13,000 from like 100 million downloads, right? So I'm worried, I'm not worried about Daft Punk, but if they're making $13,000 on 100 million Spotify downloads, like what are programmers making? Like, what are so that's something that is what about the kids?
The issue with that is musicians have other avenues to make money. So obviously concerts, merchandise, whatnot. But the problem with media is that with a game, you know, like what are you gonna do? Go to the concert? There's no concert that exists. Video games live is such a weird offshoot. It doesn't even count. So everybody. I think the biggest problem is the industry ignored the internet when it came around, and then Napster slapped them in the face, and they've never been able to catch up. Like, if the record companies were on it since day one, you'd be looking at a very different landscape.
Yeah, right, exactly. And even like the fall blockbuster when it comes to renting, they had the largest freaking user database in the world of members. If they had just done, someone in that office said, "Fuck it, let's just do before Netflix could call it, Blockbuster had done that." They instantly would have had millions of subscribers right away. But no, they stuck with it. No, people are still gonna rent, So Terence is right. You gotta jump on these things. You gotta find you gotta find a happy medium is what it comes down to satisfy all cases. But you can't resist it for too long, or it'll just, like Blockbuster and like many other music companies, it'll just die.
You know, if someone for some reason can't get to a store, fine. If it's there for them to download, awesome.
Yeah.
But the concept of removing that and then treating software like games as like OS or something that you have a license for, like collecting will die. Like even now, the repercussions are throughout the industry. Like retro collecting as it stands is almost done because it's no longer something that can be done financially. Yeah. Mike and I used to go on road trips. I would never buy anything.
Yeah.
This is fuck, but I enjoyed going with him, and I'd see what he'd spend and what he'd find and whatnot. And I'm like, we don't do it anymore because, simply put, like Shaq Fu cartridge only goes for $60. I know that's like a ridiculous example, but the days of finding like a good find are gone.
They're pretty much over.
eBay, YouTube, resellers, they're all culprits. And with DRM coming, people are starting to get worried, especially the older gamers. You know, if not consciously, subconsciously, like they have to hoard because this is something that's not going to be around, and so many things have gone. How many HMV stores are there now versus how many there were before? Blockbuster is non-existent. You know, like, so I think the industry doesn't give consumers, and I find consumers a funny thing because I view consumers as a whole as sheep, right? Like, oh, there's this and that, you know. But I find it interesting that the industry wants to stranglehold the consumer to get as much money out of them without providing a lot. Like very off topic, and I don't really want to get into it, but the concept of pre-ordering a game that hasn't come out. You're giving them money for something that you haven't even gotten. Alien Colonial Marines comes to point as a horrendous piece of shit. And, or even better, like buying a season pass, and for anyone that doesn't know that, a season pass is basically giving $20 or whatever the amount of money is to theoretically save about $5, $6 over the course of a year, and you trust that that company is going to release expansions that you will like for the game that you have.
Season pass just blow my mind that people spend money on that. That just absolutely blows. All the frivolous spending that I do, I can point and laugh at people who buy seasons passes. It's just insane.
Like, how about this? Release quality products. Yeah. People will buy it, and then people will buy your next quality products.
I remember when, like, pre-internet, like, because I used to collect comics and I was into games and all that stuff. You had to go downtown to like a dingy store and like walk up like a flight of steps, and it was this kind of it felt like this underworld experience or something. Do you guys miss arcades?
Yes.
Yeah, a lot actually. We talked about it on the video game years, how going to the arcade was such a cool experience, especially when I was younger. My dad would take me after swimming lessons and give me $3 in quarters, and I played Donkey Kong and Pac-Man. Or better yet, and this is 80s in Canada, so you get away with this, my dad would play on a softball team. Then they would all go to a bar afterwards and drink. And my dad would take me to the back of the bar where there was a tabletop Pac-Man machine, sit me down, handful of quarters, walk away and drink for the rest of the night. And here I am, how old was I back then? Like 7, 8 years old, playing Pac-Man.
That's some good parents.
Yeah. They're also like real arcades were really creepy too. Because, the main drag in Toronto was Yonge Street, and then there was a couple of them back in the day. But you'd go in there, and it's dimly lit, shifty characters, pedos, pervs everywhere. So you really had to watch where you were, what you did. And I remember the big one. I can't remember the name of it. It's a shame, but the big one that was on Yonge Street. The first closest to the Eaton Center. You go in, and there'd be like this just enormous dude behind this elevated counter. They just had this smug fucking look on his face. And it looked like he didn't know what a razor was. And you give them money and he like hits a button, the quarters come down that little thing on the train, you grab it. But around the corner from him was kind of where they kept the adult arcade games.
The Mahjong and poker ones?
And you knew it was trouble. It was literally like that back alley, and you really felt so vulnerable that you kind of like you would walk down a different aisle just to avoid it. But that was part of the mystique of it.
And even at the end of the arcade life, like I remember going to that very arcade Terence is talking about, right? It was going bankrupt and they were about to close down. So there was a Pac-Man Junior arcade machine way in the back. So I'd go there and play every once in a while. And then as I'm playing, it's like I'm making this up, and I'm not. This old Japanese man, probably in his late 70s, early 80s, came like the whole game's walking up the whole deal. So I had finished my game, and I look at him like, oh, do you want to play? And he goes, you and me, we play together. So he puts in 2 quarters. He goes first, gets to like the 3rd board without dying. And everyone's played Pac-Man Junior. It's one of the hardest Pac-Mans out there. So he gets to the 3rd board without dying, and I'm like, oh. So I get up there, and within 2 seconds, I don't know, 30 seconds, I'm dead. And so instead of taking his next turn, he looks at me, puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, you need more practice, and walks away. I kid you not.
He was teaching you a lesson.
Yeah.
So it's like a life lesson.
I don't think you can repeat that experience anymore now. You can't do that on Xbox Live or PSN. It just doesn't work. So.
But you'll never remember the sound of it? Like you'll never hear that sound of like all those different clashing. You never really hear that.
Yeah.
It's like when I was a kid, you would walk around and you would see, remember cassette tapes, and you would see, a shattered cassette tape, and you would see like that cassette tape stuff, like cotton branches or something.
Yeah,
you don't see that. You haven't seen that in 15 years.
You barely see CDs at this point.
Go on.
You barely see CDs on the ground.
Yeah, you don't even see and then there was a period where you saw like a shattered CD, like it was like someone's mixtape, and the relationship went sour, and like you don't even see that anymore. So okay, like we're coming close to the end, but maybe maybe very quickly, and then we'll see if anyone has any questions. Does anyone have any questions? Actually,
suggestion: if you're in Toronto and want a great place to go get Well Bar, they have arcade games for free. You have to pay a quarter for the pinball, but all the others is free, and it's Pac-Man and stuff like that. It's the classics.
I know one.
That's excellent.
That's fantastic.
you just don't have the aura, though, right? Like, you don't have.
But they have like the multicolored lights and everything, so they're really trying hard.
That means we have a Donkey Kong machine where I work in the back of the office, where every lunch I'm there playing the Donkey Kong machine. So that's to get that experience back. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Most excited for which game on next gen?
You know what? I'm gonna say I'm gonna cheat in here and just stick to launch games, and instead of like Mass Effect 4 or something like that I want in the future. So I'm gonna cheat. It's actually, even though I'm terrible at racing games, it's Forza 5. I've seen videos of that thing running, and it's almost shocking how good it looks and how smooth it is and the resolution. The whole deal. Like at first it was Dead Rising 3. And even Killzone, even though I haven't liked the other Killzones in the past, for some reason Killzone 4 just went, I'm buying that day one. But now I see more and more Forza 5. This is my guarantee that I'm going to, maybe not get good at racing games, but I'm at least going to freaking now concentrate on one.
I'm going to stick with you on launch. Flower.
Oh, the HD version?
1080p, 60 frames a second. It was Watch Dogs, and
but now
it's not. So, Flower. And I already own the PS3 version of it, so day one, I'll download it. Relive the magic.
I want you guys to answer with just one, no elaboration, just titles. So, Desert Island, best system of all time.
Super Nintendo.
PlayStation 3. I just figured that out last night.
Top 3 favorite games of all time.
Ooh.
Just the title.
So tough.
They're the ones you're taking with you to the desert island.
Even the 3 I say now, I'm probably going to change my mind, but I'm going to say it really quick off the top of my head. Snatcher, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Super Metroid.
I would totally take Link to the Past. Yeah.
Fuck.
It's tough. It's tough.
Snatcher, Shenmue 2, The Last of Us.
I would take Super Mario World as well. That's a pretty good game. What's the biggest game, the most popular game that people love the most that you can never get on board with?
World of Warcraft.
That's good. I wouldn't have thought of that one actually. For me, and I've desperately tried it. I've actually bought them all. I cannot get into Call of Duty. and I love action games. Believe me, I like RPGs and I've seen that wide berth, except for sports games because I've just suck at them, different style of games. But I have nothing against first-person shooters, but I cannot. I've tried. I cannot. And I finished them, but I just at the end of the time I'm just like, nah. I don't understand why this will leave me like copies.
Hardest game of all time.
Ninja Gaiden 3, Nintendo Entertainment System.
Hardest game that I beat. I could cheat and say Super Emperor Strikes Back. I'm totally gonna cheat and say when I actually finished.
Most underrated system and game of all time.
Sega CD. Most. I'm gonna go a step further. Most underappreciated as well. Just that system that I've gone on enough rants. I'll do a quick one now. Gets so much flack for just because people focus on a few full motion video games. Well, there's so many freaking good games to that system. So that one, obviously, Snatcher would be the one. But the two Lunars, Vi, Terminator, mentioned Hidden Souls. I can just go on. I can name probably 24 more very easily.
Words from my mouth.
Yeah.
We've got 5 minutes left. I want to thank everyone for being here, and let's make some noise for Terence and Big.
Thank you, person in the back for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I know you're here early for the next one, but good.